I now call this regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Hayes, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Mission statement. The Davenport Community School District is dedicated to growing excellence in academics, the arts, and athletics for every child by ensuring the highest quality education in an environment shaped by our diverse community, preparing our students to be lifelong learners and productive citizens. Vision statement. Education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Hayes. Director Klein-Jerome, would you please read the guiding principles?
Guiding principles. Opportunity. We provide abundant opportunities to empower students to reach their full potential academically, creatively, and socially. Collaboration. We foster an environment that allows students, families, and community stakeholders to come together for the betterment of our students' education and future. Transparency. We share relevant and important information with our students, families, and the community to maintain open and productive communication.
Thank you, Director Klein-Jerome. Superintendent Schneckloff, would you please read the goals?
The goal tie-in for tonight is goal number 1, enhance student learning.
Thank you. Ms. T, would you please do roll call?
Be happy to. Director Klein-Jerome,
Here.
Director Poston,
Here.
Director Potts,
Here.
Director Beck,
Here.
Director Gosa,
Here.
Director Hayes,
Here.
and Director Barnes is absent tonight.
Thank you, Brenda. All right, just for the record to let everyone know, we are going to do the public hearing, and right after that, we're going to move the superintendent report up. We have some folks here for that. We didn't want to make them wait for the whole evening to do that. We will move on to public hearing. I will now conduct a public hearing for the approval of the 95% plans and specifications for the fascia panels and coping at Jackson Elementary School. Notice of the hearing was published in the Quad City Times on July 29, 2024. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone or call 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 992-8800-1261 and passcode 334199. State your name and address for the record. All right, seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board approve the plans and specifications for the fascia panels and coping project at Jackson Elementary School as shown in the 95% plans and specifications.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. This will be a roll call vote. Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. All right, we will, as I notated at the beginning, we will move on to the superintendent report. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, President, and thank you for moving that out of respect for Lieutenant Solis, who puts in tireless days around our community. So if I could have Lieutenant Zach Solis and Sarah Ott come up to the podium. Sarah initiated a first annual backpack drive where we partnered with the fire department. And it was an incredible success. And so I'd like to turn it over to this dynamic duo here. We were able to invite a local radio station that promoted it all day long and just saw some wonderful results. So first of all, Lieutenant Solis, thank you so much for making this happen. And really, we have a theme in our district called showing up together. And I know you've heard me say that multiple times, and you're an awesome example that this community shows up together for its students and families. So first of all, thank you for your involvement and the fire department's involvement in this really important initiative. But I'll turn it over to Sarah to kind of talk about some details.
Good evening. So again, just as Superintendent Schneckloth shared, we want to thank the Davenport Fire Department for their partnership in filling the fire station. This was a first annual event, and when they approached us, they really came to us with a spirit of generosity, wanting to make sure that all of our students have what they need to start the year successfully. We know school supplies are a big part of that. So we partnered together with the Davenport Fire Department and with B100. We did a week-long event that culminated last Friday with a live event at the new Station 3, and members from the Davenport Fire Department came today to give us their supplies, and it was overwhelming. They needed more than one truck to drop it all off. So we are very thankful for their generosity. We're thankful for the generosity of our community showing up in partnership with the fire department, but really for their leadership in this. So I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Solis.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the kind words. This recognition, it means a lot, and this opportunity to be here. This is going to be the first of hopefully many. It started with a very simple idea, and then after a partnership and knowing Sarah, it really got some momentum, involving all of our fire stations, involving our community to go to their neighborhood locations to help out. And by the time I started collecting items, I could really see the impact we made. So we're just starting off. I appreciate the kind words, this recognition, and we're looking to make it easier for the schools, all of them collectively, for the students to not worry about those extra issues that might be with backpacks and school supplies. So we're here to make a positive influence, and hopefully it worked out.
The last thing that I will add is that we've had numerous other donations as well. I know the United Way also partnered with other organizations around the community for a donations drive earlier this summer. We are collecting all of those donations through the end of this week, and then we are working with our family support liaisons to divide those up and get them out to buildings next week so that the buildings will have them prior to school starting, so that if a kiddo shows up, they're in need of supplies, the buildings will have ready access to all the supplies there. So.
Well, awesome. It was nice driving around town, seeing all the signs out in front of the firehouses. It's good to see the community steps up and helps out like that. And with that, thank you again very much. We'll get everybody to come up here. TJ loves photo ops.
The second part of our report, I'd like to give a brief report about our pilots that we have going on for our cell phone. As many of you saw above the fold in Sunday's paper, we have two of our buildings, both at different levels, one Williams Middle School and Central High School, who will be using two different methods for enforcing the current policy that we have. So at Williams, we're going to be utilizing the Yonder pouches, which is a cell phone comes to school, goes in the pouch, pouch is sealed all day long, and then will be opened up at the end of the day. At the high school level, we're implementing lockers inside the classroom, which this is not new to us. There's been pouches on the back of doors, students hand their stuff in. And so this will be more of a gradual release. So our high school students will have access to their phones in their common areas and in the hallways, but not during their learning time. I'm incredibly proud of the work that's gone on with our high school principal, Mr. Alinger and Mr. Johnson, for the communication they have with their families, the things that they're putting out, the procedures that they're putting in place. And both of these leaders are more than willing to take this issue on and see how this works for our district. And I'm really proud of our district. One thing that we do and a strategy that really works for us is a field test or a pilot, because that allows 2 willing and able leaders to see exactly how this looks like inside of our district. And both of those leaders were willing to step up for this. We know the challenges that are there. We know the communication challenges, and they're both willing to step up to the table. So I wanted to give just a brief report on that, as we know that that's going to be a pressing topic across the nation, including our state. So that concludes my report.
Director Beck.
I just have one question. So you described these as pilots, and it's 2 different methods. Is the goal to sort of see if both work, which one might work better, and then move forward? Is that kind of the idea here?
Correct.
Okay.
To see if there are any gains from it, to see, and unfortunately with this, some of this might just be anecdotal, what the students feel, how the teachers feel, some of that, and there may be real data. So the thing that we need to do is to try 2 different things inside of our district. Right now, we're setting out utilizing data, utilizing things in our buildings to know that developmentally it's more appropriate for a middle school. Just put it away. That's kind of what we're doing in our elementary schools. And so then to kind of transition at the high schools, you might need that during the day because they come and go from school. They might be at an apprenticeship. They might be at different things. So that's kind of the thought process behind it. Also, I said on the front end, this is our current board policy. We're going to enforce it at the way it is. They're also going to be looking into possible suggestions to our board policy throughout this as well. So that's another outcome from this pilot field test.
Any other questions on that? Director Postrom.
I'm glad to see that you're implementing this. I question whether we're taking it far enough. In my mind, it should be implemented in all the middle schools and high schools. I think the quicker we get this in place, the better off our students are going to be, the better off our teachers are going to be.
Does anyone else have anything? I have a quick question, and maybe you'll get that to us. What are going to be your benchmarks and things you're looking for to see if this is working, and how often are you going to be? Is it like every quarter, semester? Or?
No, that's a good point. The way our district structured our instructional leadership directors, Mr. Flynn, Ben and Willie, they're going to be having ongoing biweekly conversations with the principals to see how things are going. But some of the data that we're going to be looking at is the bullying, harassment, the lost time of instruction, engagement, and things of those nature. And due to the curriculums that we'll be implementing, we will be doing engagement checks quite frequently. So there should already be a tool and mechanism there to collect that data. Plus, like I said, anecdotal data, will the students feel, at first dysregulated and then turn around and find out that it's more engaging to not be as distracted by their phone. So all of those anecdotal data points will be collected as well.
Thank you. Sometimes I wish I could just lock my phone up for a day. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you for the superintendent report. We will hop back in and move on to presentations. And our first and only presentation is our ISB Board Development Workshop. So who do you want me to turn it over to? You ladies, Tammy and Lou? Oh, Harry's online too. All right. The man in the sky.
And I don't look any better in person, remember that, okay? Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to be interacting with you tonight. And since I'm remote, 1,000 miles away, hanging out with 4 little grandkids, you may hear a little noise in the background off and on tonight. And my role will be, because of distance, I'll be the setup guy for activities, and then Lou and Tammy, since they're there in person, they'll lead the activities. And when I comment about it, it's a joy to see you and work with you. In the almost 23 years that I worked full time at the School Board Association, there were very few boards, and they were noticeable, what we would call the learning boards, that continuously over the long haul continued to chip away at their own collective learning. Translation, all 7 of you and your superintendent learning together. And tonight's time you dedicated for interaction with each other and with us is just another affirmation, just reaffirming the importance that you place on board learning. So with that, a couple of things. For your community or those watching virtually, this segment of the meeting is going to be a work session like set of activities. So it won't be, it'll look different and feel different for the next hour and a half than a typical segment of a board meeting. And a reminder to you as a whole board and your community that 4 times a year, quarterly, your board president, Dan, vice president, Karen, superintendent TJ, meet with our staff, the 3 of us, Lou, Tammy, and myself, virtually each quarter. And the purpose of that is to reflect on progress that you feel your board superintendent team has made, as well as to plan forward and to weave that into agenda planning for future work. So when we met last April, the 2 big chunks that your board leadership and superintendent identified, they stated their desire for tonight's workshop to be 2 pieces. Revisit the board superintendent goals, and the second chunk is a tune-up on effective board governance and effective leadership. So those are the 2 overarching pieces that we'll focus on tonight. And Tammy and Lou will move us into the work with getting a kickoff on governance, and then we'll slide into goal setting. So Tammy and Lou, thank you.
Hey,
And thanks again, board superintendent team.
real quick, just to notate for the folks that love watching us on YouTube, at some points during this, the board will like break out into small groups, and you may not hear it because the sound system might not pick it up. But when there's quiet periods, that's what we're doing. We're doing a breakout, and the board's doing discussion, and then we'll come back together, and then you'll hear what we talk about when we discuss it with the ISB. And I apologize for stealing your thunder, ladies. I will turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Harry. Harry, the board members are still scratching their heads that you're joining us here when you're in Maine with your grandchildren. It just shows your dedication. So thank you so much. And it's good to be back here with you. And remember, I have kids that live in Texas, so I legally can say y'all. So it's great to be back with you. Again, I'm Lou Gavist, and I don't know if you've had a chance to introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, friends. I'm Tammy Drawbaugh. I am close enough. I could almost walk here tonight, which was lovely. So I just came from about, 40 miles south of you all. So thank you for the invitation.
So as Harry said, we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. We're going to start with the board's role in setting the direction of the district. And this is on page 2 of your handout. Thanks to Brenda for getting all these ready, our handouts. Again, I'm going to reference the book where this content comes from. It's called The Governance Core, School Boards, Superintendents, and Schools Working Together. And we selected this piece intentionally because you are going to be leveraging your role tonight through our discussion, revisiting your district goals. And I'm going to set this up and then I'm going to turn it back over to you to do a quick activity. The authors talk about, if you look at the very first sentence, they talk about the definition of a moral imperative. The moral imperative is believing that as all you do, that all children can and will learn. You believe in raising the bar and closing the achievement gaps for every single student. And your moral imperative is your mission statement, that you believe in growing excellence for every child in academics, arts, and athletics. So when the authors talk about the moral imperative, that's what they're referring to. I'm going to read this next statement and then I'm going to turn it over to you. Of all the board's governance responsibilities, the most important and powerful is formally setting the strategic direction for the school district. It is in setting and sustaining the direction of the school district that the efficacy of this role is realized. And at IASB, we really do believe that you all do make a positive and significant difference for your students in your greater school community. And it's by leveraging those goals, but keeping your eye on the focus of them throughout the year. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and read the rest of these paragraphs and then highlight one, select an idea that really resonates with you. And then we're going to get you in small groups. And as a teacher, I have to get up and look at my students. Sorry, just see how you're doing. How you doing? Okay. Do you need more time? Yeah, good, good. You guys need more time? You guys good to go? Need more time? You're good? Okay. All right, what I'd like you to do is, since you're seated where you are, why don't you just turn to a partner and have a discussion about what idea you selected and why. And if you need to talk with 3 people, that's okay too. So move your chairs. What did you select and why? And then we'll do some sharing now. Okay, let's have you finish up your conversations and get ready to share out. And what I'm going to invite you to do is, as you have somebody share out from the group with whom you met, maybe piggyback from each other, talk to one another. So if you hear a similar idea, go ahead and then just speak into that. So who'd like to start? What did you pick? And Karen, what did your group say?
We picked it in that last paragraph, adopting well-developed, easily understood, measurable strategic goals and success indicators designed to achieve the moral imperative.
Talk about what did you all talk about when you mentioned that one? Why that was important?
Well, we like the fact that at the top of that, all the strategic planning, community engagement, and professional dialogue being little if the board does not take action. We've had that focus, but this is where our focus needs to be.
These items provide the compass point that keeps us going in the direction that we need to be going in.
If you have more to add, sure.
One of the other, I think Director Kleindrum talked about, we talked a lot about like the community engagement piece, because with our long range stuff and everything we've been doing a lot to involve the community, whether it be surveys and things like that, or be on committees so that, you know, they're part of the process.
You really have had a strategic focus on your governance role and setting that direction. But then with your facilities over the last couple of years and actually implementing it, and that is one of the challenges, is how do you get it into action? So well done. What else? Linda?
We selected once goals and indicators are adopted, it's the board's job to stay focused on strategic goals. We are 100% better at that today than we were at one point, because there was one point during this time that we were all over, you know, not necessarily just policies and finance, but whatever. We would kind of jump into it, and now we've literally fell back and we listen to everything explained and talk about it and leave it up to administration to take care of it.
Okay. TJ, you want to add to that?
I don't think I could say it any better.
That you all did a few years ago really did come together to set that strategic direction, but we've watched you and how you have kept those goals out front and center has been a dramatic change. Allison and Kent, what'd you pick?
We came up with part of what the first group mentioned, measurable strategic goals and success indicators, which kind of, we felt like it follows directly from the goal of increased quality of programs and greater outcomes for all students. Because if you have those, then you can say, okay, we do have an increased quality of programming, or we do have, if we can meet those goals, right? And indicators. And then we also kind of highlighted the term take action, because you can plan all you want, but unless we do the things, you know, it's not going to work. Yeah, I think that's it.
We also talked about the amount of money that we've put into curriculum. Also, a lot of money, a lot of ESSER dollars went into curriculum, interventionist. And we also talked about actions that need to be taken, you know, down the road, which where we also talk about early literacy, pre-K. So those are a couple things that I myself personally feel that we need to spend more time on.
Well, and I think that just speaks to one of my favorite statements, and it's right in the middle. Decisions made by the board here will have a profound impact on the success of the district. That this is your legacy moment, and what you are doing today does have a significant impact now and into the future.
Well, and one other thing we talked about too is especially when it comes to curriculum, you know, how long before we will see a measurable difference. For me, it's probably not happening quick enough, but I know it's going to take time. But then you got to look at some other factors thrown in there, and one of those would be attendance.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. definitely. Well, we just want to take a moment to recognize your role in setting the direction, and I think that tees you up, Harry, for the next piece. And I don't know if you had any comments that you wanted to make.
Really liked, appreciated what they had to say. So, no, I think as we transition into the goals, just a couple of sentences. One would be the 22, 23 goal areas. If you look at page 3 in your materials, those were the big areas. And we thought it would be good to do a quick revisit where those, how has those evolved and where did they come from? So if we roll back the clock 4 or 5 years ago, at a time when the Department of Ed, the Iowa Department of Ed, was much more active in oversight of your district, and Tom Lane was a consultant assigned by the Department of Ed, and he worked with leadership back then, again, at least 4 or 5 years ago, perhaps even longer, and they set goals. And at that time, those of you who were on the board, remember you had like 8, 9, 10 goals. I didn't bother to go back and look, but it was a lot. And so when this iteration came up, 22, 23, your team reduced the number of goals and actually sharpened them, in our opinion. And so when we talked when Tammy, Lou, and I talked with your board leadership and TJ this spring and again this summer, ISB recommended that and asked them, do you want to start with a blank slate or do you want to start with these goals and reflect on, is there anything missing? How are we feeling about this work? That sort of conversation. And your leadership had said, yeah, we think it makes sense to start with these goal areas. They are, in a sense, timeless. They're long-term goals. You keep chipping away. But under those goals, Allison, you mentioned that you appreciated the short-term goals, those kind of next steps and those indicators. And those are probably the ones that should be getting updated every year or two under the larger goal area. And that aligned with our thinking or recommendations that you've put prior work into these goals. It makes sense to start with them and react and refine them. Lou or Tammy, anything else you would add in terms of that? I try to keep this at 2 minutes or less, that intro on where these goals came from originally.
No, we're good here.
Okay. Then Tammy and Lou will guide us through, and there will be some interaction between these goal areas, the short term and the indicators and the superintendent goals. We'll share a little bit more as the session goes on here, but want to use those as a kickoff point. So, Tammy and Lou, it's all yours.
I'm going to introduce you to the next activity, and I'm just going to remind your audience, Dan, as you so eloquently said, y'all are going to spend a little time talking to each other, and so I don't want your viewers to think the audio's not working, but when you're working in groups, that they won't hear you. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do, friends, this might be a little painful, but how about you go sit next to someone you are not sitting next to now? In other words, we're going to mix you up because you already worked with each other once. We're going to have you go talk to somebody else. You can just trade with your neighbor next to you if you want. You can, there you go. TJ got lucky. He didn't even have to trade his chair. All right, Harry teed up so beautifully the work that you have done on your goals. That was on page 5. And you may want to reference back to that, but here's where I really want you to focus. I would like you in your groups to focus on pages 3 and 4. So on page 3, we just took the liberty of taking those beautiful goals that you already had, that you had worked on, and we put those headings on page 3. So you'll notice that first one, enhanced student learning, which is really around achievement. What we would like you to do in your groups is if you flip to page 4, there are 2 questions. And for each of the goals, we'd like you to have a discussion and answer those 2 questions, which one is that goal still important? We want you to go through and talk about that for each of those goals that are listed. Is it still important? And with your partner, talk about why is it important or why it's not important. And there are no right or wrong answers, friends, or all right answers, no wrong answers. That's what I should say. And the second question then is to think about, is there an additional goal that you need that's not listed? Is there something compelling that as a board you really want to focus on? What questions do you have for me before I stop talking and let you work with your partner? So you're looking at those goals on page 3, thinking about for the current year. You're answering each question on page 4 for each goal. And you've got 4, so you'll have at least 8 answers there by the time you're all done if my math is working.
So you want us to jot notes on pages 5 and 6 then for each question?
I would jot your notes. It would be easier, I think, to jot them on 3 and 4.
Okay.
So 4 has the questions on them. But if you want to look at, well, what did we really do? What did we do under student achievement? I don't remember. If you're like me, I've eaten and slept since then. I need to go look at something. Page 5 will give you the roadmap of that work that you've done. Does that make sense? All right. Lou and I will just be lingering over your shoulders listening. This is when the facilitator knows she did not give clear directions, because this was a really good question. So you are not rewriting your goals tonight. What you're doing, in my words, I would say, is you're really having a gut check. If we just stuck with those 4 high-level goals, not the detail that you've been working on, but just those high-level goals, is that the right place to start? But you're going to ask your team that for each one. TJ will spend time later flushing out what that could look like, bringing you back information. You all would be having a lot of discussion on that, but just at a high level. Enhanced student learning, again, student achievement, is that a good goal for the coming year or so? Does that help? All right, friends, are you ready to share out? And y'all get quiet. Who wants to share the conversation that you had with your partner or your pairs? Should we talk about one goal at a time? That might be easiest. Clearly, Dan's he's ditched you all, I see. Not really.
We
What did you decide on enhanced student learning? Let's start with that first goal.
actually, we said it was important, and in our discussion, we found that the answer for number one basically ran into each of the goals. One goal that we mentioned specifically is the scoring for the African American students versus others. That number doesn't really change much. What differently can we do to make those numbers change? We're we have to do something different, otherwise we're going to get the same results. So that led into the disproportionality, which with the safe learning environment, we feel that there would be less bullying somehow. But if students felt a part of something, I think they would feel like a family type where the bullying wouldn't be an issue at all. And if we had the money, we would have more bodies to make sure all of these items took place.
So, Linda, I almost called you Kent. Linda, I think what I heard you say is y'all liked goal number one. You're in favor of keeping it.
Mhm.
And you just did a beautiful job of then really talking about how it weaves into 2, 3, and 4. Right? Is that a fair assessment? Allison, you were going to add.
And we also said that really that should never not be a goal. Like that should always be the goal, because at the end of the day, our job is to improve student achievement. And
Can we say that one more time?
at the end of the day, our job is to improve student achievement. So that should always be our goal.
I love that. Dan, they did a beautiful job. Do you have anything you would like to add?
I thought they did great. I didn't want to really try to add anything else. Again, student achievement is always number one, right? So.
All right, I'm going to move to team number 2. We were just going to go goal by goal, but they sort of broke the mold and set the record. I am just saying, no, it's okay. It was beautiful.
We felt that goal 1, 2, and 3 should remain, but not necessarily goal 4. Not because finances, facilities, and staff aren't important, but we have developed a very good cadence and plan on how we're going to do it. So if we're already doing it the way it should be done, why do we keep it as a goal? So that would be one that we thought possibly could be set aside. Unless at some point Kevin and TJ aren't sitting here, then we might need to bring it back. But right now, it's already being done well.
So 1, 2, and 3, you all gave a thumbs up to, and that just for your audience. So enhanced student learning was achievement, increase access, and success for all students. That was your disproportionality. And 3, all students experience a safe learning environment, which was bullying, harassment, and student discipline. And then I think, Karen, what I heard you say is we're not going to say finances and facilities aren't important, but you have a great process of how you monitor that, and you're not looking to change that. Is that a fair statement? So you're not taking your eye off the ball, but you're just not necessarily sure that you need it called out as a specific goal. Is that a fair assessment? Okay. TJ, you want to add anything to that? Okay. All right, Kent and Bruce, what did you come up with? They're going to rock, paper, scissors.
So we, talking about all 4 goals, we felt that anything, as far as adding a new goal, anything that we would think about adding would fall under one of these 4 goals. So we didn't think there'd be a need to add another goal. we talked about the facilities, do agree with what Karen said, but the other thing we got to keep in mind is we're putting a ton of money into facilities, and so we need to continue, to monitor that. But as Karen said, everything is in place nicely for that right now. So, but as far as the other categories, you talk about priorities, if you talk about early literacy or pre-K or graduation rate, that still all falls under one of these categories or goals. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I think we looked at our 4 goals as like the 4 legs of a table, of the education table. And without any one of them, you got a 3-legged table. And in particular, goal 4, finances, is what got us in a whole lot of trouble. And we need to keep a real focus on that, because our financial situation changes with open enrollment and tuition credits and all. So we can't count on a constant or steady financial stream. And as Ken said, we're investing, I don't know, $100 million or more in facilities. And we have to keep we need to keep a handle on that, because you can easily get building creep, construction creep. It just happens. Same thing with staff. We just add one teacher here. Oh, well, we'll just add one teacher there. Or we'll just. He's a happy man, yeah. Any building guy is happy in a building boom when he doesn't have to spend money on fixing the old stuff.
So I hear a lot of consensus that you like what you have done from that high level previously. Not only maybe like is the wrong word, but you feel like that is the right direction. You don't have to marry anything tonight or commit to it, but it sounds like you have room to have some conversation about maybe that number 4, where you may or may not put that. And again, you don't have to make that decision tonight, but it may be some more conversation you want to have. Allison?
Yeah, I think we thought it's an important goal and we should keep it, but I think we kind of touched on and didn't really get into discussing it, the idea of the innovative use of things like finances. We're still going to always need to do that, right? Because we don't know what we're getting with all the different things that have happened to school finance in the last couple of years. And staff, being innovative with the way we use our staff is still an important thing that feeds into some of these other things where, for example, a safe learning environment, right? That means everyone participates in making students feel safe. And so in a way, that's sort of also innovative, and the innovative use of facilities. And so I think reframing, maybe more than putting aside that goal, would be my personal thoughts right now. But yeah, like you said, we don't have to decide yet.
If you kept goals 1 through 4 at that really high level, Kent and Bruce, you back me up on this because we talked about this. This is where I'm waiting for you to go, yeah. All right, I'm cueing you. Okay. If you take those 4, could those be key areas of focus for the next 50 years? They sure could.
Yes.
What you do, the activity, the strategic piece of, and what TJ may recommend and what you all decide, it might look different from year to year. I'm not saying you have to keep them for 50 years, by the way, but you have great places where you are starting. And what I like for all of you is you don't have to reinvent the wheel on those key areas. Did you talk about that second question? Is there an additional goal that maybe you should consider? Or is there a compelling goal that's missing?
We talked about it, but we didn't come up with one, so probably no.
Okay. Which is a beautiful answer. Okay.
So we talked about it, but we talked about we could add bullets underneath of the 4 that we already have. And I'll just add this. Just because we have this board right now doesn't mean that this board's going to be here forever or the superintendent. But what we've started on the course, coming out of partial accreditation and stuff, it's legacy work, right? We are paving the way and trying to keep the wheels on and moving forward and keeping the trajectory going so that if new board people come in, new staff and things like that, this is the charge that has been working for this district. And when you find something that works, because we tried a bunch of stuff before and didn't work, and this stuff is working, and that's what we need to drive home. Because at the end of the day, and I say legacy work, but at the end of the day, it is about the direct impact on the student in the classroom, and that's what we always have to keep in the forefront of everything that we do. And again, that comes for future years, because what we're doing in early learning right now, that's our portrait of a graduate when they graduate in 12 years. So,
Dan, I think that's a great statement, and it would be a question I will ask each of you is how will you carry that legacy work forward when the time comes and you aren't sitting at the table, or you have a new person at the table, whomever that might be? What does that look like, board, on how you talk about, hey, Lou's a new board member, I want to make sure that she really understands. Here's what, we didn't just dream this up in the dark of night. We spent a lot of time and hours together. Here's what's really important to the team. And then I bring Lou up to speed on that, or whomever that may be. I think that's really important because, friends, the work you have done is incredible. It really is. And it's amazing to get to watch you all do that work. Harry, would you, what nuggets of information would you add, my friend, or Lou?
Yeah, I would just echo the timelessness that these are long-term goals. That's why they're listed as long-term at the top. But the idea, when I was a kid, I can remember going to the dime store, and I'll really date myself, and you could push the button on the counter and watch the trays come up with the next, whatever would roll up next. And that idea of short-term superintendent goals and those indicators are, what are we really focusing on under each of these big 4 areas next year and the following year and the following year, and to continue to update that. My other thought was, Tammy, when you said to them, the challenge is how do you pass this on to subsequent board members? And a huge part of it is by having clear goals, keeping the focus on them, monitoring them regularly, and revisiting them each year like we are now, saying, do we need to do any tweaking or major revising? And just get into that as a cadence, that cycle, which you are into, continue that cadence and talk with new board members about why that rhythm is so important.
Lou? Okay. Harry, do you want to talk about next steps for them?
Sure do. Thank you. Tammy, Lou, and I had asked TJ to just pick a couple of these areas and quickly share. Now, no, that's not fair when you're looking to your left and smiling, and I don't know what you're smiling about. Shoot.
TJ was not sitting in his seat when you were about to hand it off to him, so he ran back over real quick, Harry.
All right. Good cover. Anyway, we had asked TJ, and this is in alignment with what Tammy, Lou, and I suggest with board teams all over the state, is once there's agreement or a shell of agreement around the big areas, that we ask the superintendent to then align his goals, and we call it shorter term. What's getting attention this next year or 2 under the big areas? And to just share a sample or 2 of those and a sample or 2 of some indicators. And then after TJ shares those samples tonight, that the expectation would be over the coming weeks that he would work with his cabinet or whoever he needs to get those refined and bring back where it's blank on this sheet to the board for follow-up discussion. So TJ, what else would you add to that process, or just please share a couple examples?
Sure, and Oh, is that going to feedback? No, good, okay. So for goal number one, and the cabinet, we discussed this previously. So everything that I'm going to say to you is a direct action that you will find on our Growing Excellence district-wide plan. So one of the things that we try to ensure is that everything, the board set this direction however many years ago, and then we built our Growing Excellence, which are our district building plans based off of this. And so it's really fun to look at goals 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the conversation that Karen and I shared is that some of that is business as usual, and we have it in place, and we're going, let's really focus on something new. That's, first of all, that's an even exciting discussion to hear and have. And so everything that I'm going to say, our cabinet, our buildings have all been working towards in units, rowing in the same direction. So the first one is, it's student achievement. We're kind of framing it in a different way. So that overarching short-term superintendent goal is that we're going to increase our graduation rates, increase the number of students participating in post-secondary, and also increase the number of our students entering the workforce and a certificate. So that notion that our students are getting to graduation at a higher rate and earning something past that. Now, what leads into that? So we are starting to view student achievement as a pipeline. So if you're a preschool teacher, that's your goal. You have a child in your class that's going to get to and through this bar with a certificate, a job, and being successful. So we need to increase the number of students participating in our preschool programs. They're amazing programs. Let's get more students in them. The second part is we need to implement our curriculums at every level, particularly amplify at the elementary level this year, number one. And I say implement it first because, to Kent's question, the implementation is a science. We need to allow our teachers to get the materials, to explore them in a safe space, to get feedback in an appropriate way, and know and understand how to use those materials. That takes time. That's that part of the pipeline. And then from our secondary areas, the notion that we're going to increase our MTSS system. So what do we do for every single student along the way? Our students that are advanced, our students that need a little core plus, and then our students that need heavy intervention. And our high school teams and our middle school teams have been working on that. We've been moving in that direction over the last couple of years with infrastructure, time and opportunity, all of those things. For example, our high school is working on adjusting their schedule to meet the needs of their students. That'd be one thing. For goal number 2, disproportionality, the number one thing that we need to do to implement disproportionality or to improve disproportionality in our district is to implement high rigorous curriculums all the way across our district. Everyone should have an opportunity with curriculum highly tied to standards that's engaging, that has longevity. And that's exactly what our district's done over the last 2 or 3 years. So, whether it be HMH, Amplify, and our secondary schools doing those resource mapping, looking at standards, grading practices, things of that nature, all of those things will help with our disproportionality. The other component is that in the previous one, we need to ensure that our data is disaggregated that way so we can see, so we can actually take a look at it. So all of our systems and processes, that was a previous goal I just want to highlight. Identify key areas, identify data. How do we use that data? Those were our previous goals. Now we're done measuring and weighing. Now it's time to start putting the plans in place. And so that's kind of a success as well. For goal number 3, increase the number of students positively engaged, safe, engaged. So this upper arch, our students need to be safe, they need to be engaged, and they need to be earning credits, earning whatever it needs to be. The way we're going to do that is we're going to continue to work on our SIT team essentials. So for our student intervention teams, we have them at every single building. What is an essential component of that team? We need to have our tier 2 checks. We need to have our tier 2 procedures in place. So right now, district-wide, we're training on tier 2 and check and connect and systematizing it all the way across our district. We need implementation of Character Strong, which is our which is, again, another curriculum, and that's a guaranteed and viable social emotional curriculum that we're putting in place. And then year 2 and year 3 of our bullying and harassment and responses and procedures that our board pushed us to establish. We need to be very reliable with how we respond to bullying and harassment in our district. So we need to continue to implement and improve those practices. And so for number 4, to celebrate some of those things, we have a lot of procedures and practices in place. But if I were to put something down here, I wanted the board to continually ask us about, are we utilizing my overarching component is, are we utilizing the tools effective to measure the future, to forecast the future? We are coming into a time where there's going to be quite a bit of change. We're going to wind up on phase 1 of our long-range facility plan. There's a lot that can happen, but are we sitting down? Are we horizon focused? Are we managing those projects where we can get every dime that can make sure that all parts of the project are occurring? In terms of our finances, are we utilizing our forecast? Are we putting everything on a 5-year projection? Because there are things that we can do for 1 or 2 years, but at the year 5, we're right back to where we were 5 years ago. So utilizing those key assumptions and forecasting tools are incredibly important. And then right when phase 1 facilities ends, we should be able to have phase 2 ready to go. And so that's going to take quite a bit of horizon talk about that. And the structures are already in place. What does that look like? What is our next focus? How are we going to accomplish that? So that notion that we're not reactive, we're proactive, that would be a goal for number 4 if we choose to do that, if we choose to keep goal number 4. So those are some of the reflections. Those are the highlights plucked exactly from our Growing Excellence Plan. Those are actual items that our buildings are implementing that I believe will move the needle. The graduation rate is my North Star. That's my conversations are going to be based around that. How do we support our students to and through graduation? That's what our community demands of us. And so sometimes we're going to go upriver. You ever seen that? Why are all these babies in the river? Hurry up and get them out, but then find out why they're falling in the river. So that preschool, that early childhood, that's the component where we need to ensure that they're not getting in the at-risk area before. And I think we're poised to do all of those things.
And so TJ, so what we would be looking to do, and we just asked him to verbally share some samples tonight because we weren't sure how the board would feel about those 4 goal areas. But a next step would be that TJ would kind of reaffirm those, get them cleaned up and on paper and add them into the goals here and bring them back to the board to review, say we're good with these or answer questions about them, etc. We on the same page on that one, TJ? And board, just take a minute and talk with the person next to you. How does that sound as a next step? TJ, based on staff conversations, gets them on paper, brings them back to you, and then you can have whatever deeper discussion you might need. Would you talk with the person next to you for a minute, please?
Harry, there thumbs up around the table.
And I would, great. And I would just take us back to my opening comments at the beginning. It was not just blowing smoke or lifting you guys up. And somebody said a little bit earlier, think where you were 4, 5, 6 years ago. I'm not sure you had good, clear goals from an outside perspective at that point. And the fact that you've got them in position and can reflect, and you can hear from TJ the carry through across administrative staff and buildings. Good for you guys. So with that, let's move into our last piece around effective boardsmanship, better boardsmanship. And the quick setup here would be, if you would turn in your materials, it'd help if I'd do the same thing. Turn to page 7. And that's the opening piece that you reflected on. Lou guided you through that. And just want to underscore the items highlighted in yellow near the bottom. And Allison, you said this earlier, what we should always be after. Somebody else said that too, is that we're improving the quality of programs, our instruction, and bottom line, results for kids. That's what we're after. And that second to the last paragraph, measurable strategic goals and success indicators. Sound familiar with the sheet we were just looking at? TJ plugs in those shorter term goals, add some indicators to it, bang. Bottom one, board's job to stay focused on those strategic goals. And our team thought two tools you've already been using, it would made a lot of sense to just come back and quickly revisit those. And for the purpose of reinforcing what have we been doing, what's easy to slide away from and get out of a cadence or rhythm. That is the very things that will help us provide leadership in the most effective ways possible. And so Tammy and Lou are going to guide you through a reflection on board questions, page 8. If you flip to those, a 30-second or 1-minute set of comments from here on those. Where did these come from? Your board team, about four plus years ago, contacted ISB. I can remember the conversation with Dan saying, we've talked about this as a board. What kind of questions should we be asking? ISB, what do you have for us? And that pressed our team, including our finance team, our legal team, spent a couple afternoons. I know 8 questions doesn't look like it, but we wanted to build a template for you in response to your question. What kind of questions should we be asking? And you've already said this over the last 3-4 years. The intent isn't that you ask all 8 of these at every meeting. They're going to be seasonal, but these cover key areas that can strengthen the board's monitoring role and minimize getting down in the weeds and micromanaging. How do we ask questions and stay on top of how it's going without getting in the way of the work of staff? So that's where these questions came from. And Tammy will guide you through a reflection on these places. Or Lou, or both.
Okay, I'll take it. Thanks, Harry. Honestly, I have to tell you that when we are working with board teams now, the questions on page 8, you get all the credit because we say these questions came because I remember board members asking. I was at the workshop when you said, what questions should we be asking? So you've not only impacted yourselves, but your peers across the state. So thank you. We're going to have you look at these questions and have a brief conversation, and we're going to just get you in 2 groups. So 2 groups of 4. And on page 9, board members, as you look at these questions, these are the 2 questions that you're going to be thinking about. Look at and pick out a couple of the questions that you feel are most helpful for you, that you've been asking to your team when you're hearing from staff. And also, what could you do to strengthen, and we're going to use your word, your cadence of using these. And then TJ, you can be in one of the small groups, but you can see your 2 questions. How have you used these with your staff to help shape their reports so that they're at the governance level and consistent? And also, what could you do to help strengthen the cadence for the board and you to use these? Okay? So let's just go ahead and do you want to just join, look at that? Woo. Okay, slide over and have a brief conversation, then we'll share out. Okay. Okay, let's bring y'all. Okay, let's come back together. And let's debrief your provocative conversations. No, you're fine.
We were talking and we didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I just said we're coming back together.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you did not miss anything. All right. Bless you. Sorry. Yeah, so let's just come back together now and debrief your small group conversations and share with each other. And let's hear from you let's start with the board. What were the questions that you find on here to be most helpful for you?
I'll go ahead and start. We all really appreciate all of the questions and the fact that they are now, thanks to TJ's work with the cabinet, kind of woven into most of the presentations we get already. We tend to have a lot of information without having to ask a lot of questions. But I think, at least for me, number 8, what will be the long-term evidence of success and the sustainability, is probably one of the most important ones that I still often ask it, even though it's typically built into the presentation, because it doesn't matter how great we did something if we can't repeat it and keep it up. And so I think that's super helpful. And then the other thing that we talked about is the fact that, 2 or 3 key ideas from presentations. We tend to do board reflections, but we don't always remember to sort of highlight the one thing that really stuck out to us about the presentation. But it is a helpful thing to have. But as a whole, these questions have really streamlined our board meetings. We all know when updates are coming for the most part. We already know, where we stand, what the goals are for each presentation. And it's made our meetings shorter.
More efficient.
More efficient would probably be a better way to describe it. Yeah.
And you said also one key takeaway, Allison, from what you just shared too, when we talked about setting the strategic direction, staying focused on your goals. This is one key way that you're doing that when you're getting this kind of information. It's tying it back to
Right. And we're now far enough in the cycle that we're getting reports again that we had the first one, a year or 2 ago. And so the cycle's completing and we're getting the updated version of, where is student achievement in math or something like that. And that's super, super important, but it's the same basic questions.
Yeah. So you can see where you were, see where you're going, how things are going. Okay. What did your team talk about in terms of what questions have been helpful? Karen or Bruce or Kent, what questions did you talk about that were helpful?
Well, we looked at 2, 3, 2, 4, and 7, and just looking at this closer, I think you could take the other monitoring questions and could actually plug them into those 3. So my thought is that you could have just the 3 questions and everything else would be covered by those 3.
Mm-hmm. To where are we making progress? What supports are needed? And did your team talk about using 7 maybe as a way to improve? Did you talk about that earlier? Those key messages, or am I just?
Oh, yeah, because we do board reflections, but often we tend to hit on sort of the big things and the students that have been at our meeting or something like that, and this is kind of a reminder, oh no, there's often something really important that the community should know about from the data in this presentation or something like that. So
Yeah, if you all agree, this is what the key takeaway is. Think about that in terms of helping to educate your public and celebrate the good things that are happening. TJ, what were your thoughts on the questions?
Well, I totally agree. They streamline our thoughts. They ensure that we are staying at the level that we're supposed to stay at. But probably the biggest thing that comes from these questions is putting in perspective. So we had a conversation today, and when you put brand new materials in a teacher's hands, it takes them a very long time to get good at using those materials or a tool or a new tool. And so knowing that the questions are framed, what can we expect? You know, and that's critically important because nobody wants the new materials, the new strategies, things that we're doing to work in 24 hours more than we do. But just to give us perspective that it's long obedience in the right direction, and that's what we need to continue to do. The other thing is that these questions are grounded in support. And so if you look at our board, when we bring things forward, they ask these questions and then they support. They move forward. How can we support you? And that was highlighted today when a teacher came up to me and said, hey, I've been in 3 different buildings and they all look so bright and beautiful. And what the decision the boards are making are really supporting, you know, that was the overall theme for that teacher. The other thing that our board does a really good job off of these questions is if they want to ask some more in-depth questions, they're sending them to us ahead of time and allowing us to weave them into the presentations. So our presentations oftentimes might dip down into the weeds, and then some really good conversations come from that. When we get those questions ahead of time, we just weave them into the presentation or make sure to say them at the end, or the board member just asks them to us and we're ready for them. So that these 2 questions do those things for us. And I would say, you know, one of the things that we could strengthen and enhance in our cadence is that I put for number 7, those are like talking points. And every single board member is so deeply connected to a different part of the community. So that it's better than running a commercial. So why not build in those, here are the things that you should know. You know, when we say it was imperative for us to close buildings because if Bettendorf schools closed down, we could absorb them without adding a desk. That's an incredible talking point, piece of data, thing the community needs to know. And so I would say that would be a good next step for our cabinet to really weave in. Here's your talking points. When somebody asks you, well, when can we expect it? Here's what you can expect. Here's what you say. So that was my reflection.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought about how to incorporate that is to help the staff think about how the board can talk about it in lay terms in an easy way with an elevator speech.
Well, we respond. That's a very effective way for our school board when we sit down and say, what is it that we all believe in, and those talking points really help us move forward when we're implementing something or we're entering a difficult time. That strategy that you know our board leadership team implemented when we first were going through our long range facility plan really helped out, and that was at the suggestion of ISB. So
makes a big difference. Well, thank you for. This is the legacy work inside the system again of building this habit of practice. So no matter who's sitting at the table, you're embedding that into your work, the staff's work, but you also, as I said, we share this with many board teams. I have a workshop on Wednesday. They're getting these questions. So, yes.
So from my perspective, I sit back, right, and I kind of facilitate the meeting, and I do go back and watch our YouTube videos sometimes, because we all don't realize this, but we're very intimidating up here, right? When you come to present, you're presenting to your bosses, right? And you can definitely tell, like sometimes, because I sit right next to TJ, right? You can definitely tell, and I think having these questions built into it, it kind of helps them know where the board's coming from. But then sometimes during the presentation, we'll come out of left field with some stuff. but if you notice, it gets built into the next presentation and things like that. So I think it kind of helps the admin team as well. They kind of know where the board's at and kind of what, we're 7 different people, right? And I think that helps out a lot, as well as we all get asked questions from the community. And if we're able to ask those questions at the table, then they get to hear that stuff. And then, just having the 8 questions, a lot builds off of that from the presentation and things. And I will say this, from being on this board a long time, when they don't have an answer, it's not, oh, they make something up. Hey, we don't know that right now. We'll get back to you on that. That is a very huge thing, because it wasn't always like that. There's a lot of misinformation and misrepresentation on a lot of things. But I think, going forward, they've gotten that down, that we'll call you out if you're going to give us, stuff. So I think it's made it very, very good, but it also helps the cabinet know where the board's at, and hey, we're really hard charging for this stuff, and I think that helps them as well too. So as well, the superintendent, when he goes back, he kind of knows, how we're setting the tone for, again, legacy work. So
Wonderful. Thank you. Even though you might be a little bit intimidating, you are very nice people. It is scary, though. I have to say, it is scary when you present to the board. Harry, you want to take it from here?
You bet. Thank you. And you guys nailed such important things. I'm thinking back to that opening piece Lou did. Clear, strong goals, regular monitoring and progress reports and presentations, keeping the focus on the goals. Support. It's really built heavily. Kent, as you said, probably all these questions could nest under 3 of them. And I come back to question 4. That so often doesn't get asked. Good, clear, strong goals and a strong monitoring system doesn't amount to squat if the board and superintendent aren't ensuring, before they ever start, that adequate support has been identified and it's in place. And so that ought to be, and that's another reason that question is built in there. So as we turn the corner on the last thing or two, and we're probably being sensitive to time, not going to do the kind of justice to your board protocols or norms that we'd like to, but we just see that that's such important work that boards and soups periodically, at least annually, if not more, reflect how's it going. So the 1-minute trip down memory lane, page 10, where did these protocols come from? They really rolled out of one of our first workshops with you. And actually, I think Lou and either Patty or Siobhan came with Lou and started talking about with you, what do you need from each other as board members? What do you need from the soup? What does the soup need from you? And this was well before TJ's time as superintendent. And I am so proud for you guys when I look at protocols 1 and 2. 2 is an example of one you guys added in. It wasn't in the first round, but after a couple of years of really focused work on goals, board leadership, and your whole board said in a workshop like tonight, we don't, where's our our norm or protocol that really stresses that our agenda time and our discussion needs ought to be primarily aimed at district goals and priorities. And so there they are. And Lou and Tammy will guide you through this next piece. The one thing, it'll be a very cursory look, but the one thing I also would mention is items 6, 7, and 8 mention the word continuums, and that's the next page in your packet. And where those continuums came from is as we worked with you, one of the things I recall you were wrestling with, wanting to be clear the kinds of information you need to make effective decisions. And TJ has fulfilled that role well, not perfect, none of us are, but he's real sensitive and pays attention and solicits from board members, the board team, what do you need? And those continuums came about as a filter to think about when you ask for information. And Kent, I can remember you more than once saying, I don't care how long it takes for the information to be gathered. If we need it, we need it, which is so true, so true. By the same token, it benefits the board to know, and TJ to know what kind of load is that going to place on superintendent and staff when you ask for information, just so you can kind of keep that in check or balance. So with that, Lou and Tammy, an abbreviated peek at protocols. And I think, Tammy, this is mainly your bailiwick, right?
Yes. I'm going to have you take a look. Harry, that was a great tee up. Thank you for that on both the protocols and the continuum page. Let's just, for sake of, I think we are now standing between you and your next agenda item. So let's look at page 12 together. And I would just ask, can we do a little bit of a whole group share out on the questions as you reflect on thinking about your protocols that you designed that are in the packet? How have they been helpful to the board and superintendent team? I'm going to just take a few minutes if you need to think about that, or if you're ready to shout out an answer. Yeah, the protocols are, your protocols are on page 10 and your continuum is on page 11, but on page 12 are the questions. And let's just start with that very first one there.
So one of the biggest things that encompasses all of the protocols, right? We came out of this, and when Kent and Karen came on the board, we did an expulsion hearing, I think it was, and they really didn't know like how everything operated. And then after that, we worked with you all to come up with an onboarding where we can go over these things in more of a relaxed situation, and then new board members can ask questions. I know we spent like 3 hours with Director Barnes when he came on, myself, the superintendent, and our board secretary Brendan. That's been very helpful, and the whole board was a part of that process. Like, hey, what do you wish you knew when you came on the board, and things like that. So then there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes to make it run a little more smoothly, because again, you don't know what you don't know, right? And just like a meeting like this, a lot of work goes into things like that. So those protocols and things, and then just setting back, because I think every one of us can attest to when we got on the board, you pretty much a laptop's what you got, and hey, go about your business, and you didn't really know. And I think, and I will say this about this board in particular, I would put this board here against any other board, any city council, any county board. Uh, Not one person on this board gets paid. Everyone shows up, they care while they're there, and they do everything for the right reasons. We might have difficult discussions at times and not agree on things, but we come out of it better for that. And at the end of the day, it's the student impact in that classroom is what we all focus on. So,
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else specifically on those protocols? How have they been helpful to the board superintendent team? Bruce?
I think by following one, the agenda procedures, and four, channeling the questions, and then the communications back from the superintendent weekly, it allowed us, it naturally made board requests almost evaporate. Because not very long ago, we were constipated with board requests. And those board requests were asking minutia and buckets of minutia data. And once we got aligned with how we're going to operate and a more free flow of information, they've basically, I mean, we don't even have one a meeting. I don't even know if we keep the spreadsheet anymore. Okay, well, but there's nothing on it, right?
About
Four, okay, yeah. I mean, the spreadsheet used to be a page and a half.
Anyone else want to share?
Item number 5, with maximizing the superintendent and board secretary's communication with the board, we would all call in or email in with different issues. And now with TJ's Friday report that he sends out, everything that has taken place through that week, we're well aware of that. And I think there's been some things that you've sent out the Friday report, and there's been questions asked of information on the reports that you can see who reads this Friday reports, who does not read the Friday reports. So it's brought our communication is much clearer. If we do not know, it's because we haven't followed up to read it. And of course, Brenda, she's awesome, just stays with us. If she sends out an email that we miss, she will text, check your email, so we can all stay in touch and know exactly what's going on and stay on top of things.
That's awesome. How about TJ?
For me, these are agreements. So this is the way that I promise to treat the board, and this is the way that they promise they agree to treat us. And it allows us to have conversations around an agreement, not one another, because these are very personal things. And so that's the most valuable part of this for me, because we agreed that we would do this. So, if there's been times where I didn't do something, it's like, hey, we got to make sure that we're doing this. Yep, absolutely. That's what we agreed upon. We're not perfect. The other thing that's incredibly important here is that in the time that we were in those times, the board picks up the rope and they have to carry it forward. And we needed these to put that responsibility back in the administration's hands. And that is occurring. Like number 9, I can't tell you the amount of emails that I get from this board that are forwarded to me, and they expect me to respond, or somebody in our organization to respond to that human being. And the uniform in response is better. Because we don't have board members with agendas. We have board members that want to move this agenda forward. And this is an example of that. And I'm incredibly proud of these things because it allows us to interrogate reality and not one another when we find ourselves out of sorts with this. So when we get into my evaluation, we oftentimes talk about what do we need to strengthen. We need, one of the feedback pieces I got was sometimes the Friday report doesn't have the right information in it, so we need to adjust it, and so that allows them to interrogate reality and not me. And so there are agreements, and they're really, really important to me. Like, these are so important to me and to our staff, and they operate under this. They know how this information flows, and it's incredibly important. Probably one of the most important documents inside of our district, in my opinion.
I don't know how to follow that. That's a powerful statement, TJ. One thing I would offer to all of you is it's really good to reflect on these once a year. And it sounds like to me they might still be important to all of you, which is beautiful. And I think, Dan, you talked about, onboarding. So thinking about how do you bring that forward to the next individuals if you need to do that. Harry?
Took me a second to get unmuted. Sorry about that. This next piece, it's a couple of minutes. It's not lengthy. And Tammy, a head nod would be good. Adapting here for just short, so we will wrap up our time here. But one of the last thing that board leadership and TJ had talked with us about, and we mentioned these quarterly meetings, and one of the things we always ask them, what are you facing over the coming months? What's coming up? What's the board leadership and the whole board need to be focused on? How can we help? And this last piece, it's barely an intro, what gave birth to that is we go back 3-4 years ago when you were under intense scrutiny from the State Board of Education and the Department of Ed. They were pretty directive about you need the message we recall you receiving is you need to meet more often and you need to meet for longer lengths of time. And it wasn't necessarily focused on what do you need to accomplish and how much time does it take to accomplish that. It was from afar, well intentioned, but a mandate in a sense. And having watched you from afar and sometimes in the room with you, the progress you've made, your leadership, and we agree with them, are thinking it would make sense as you head into your annual meeting later this fall, between now and then, that you guys would have some conversations around, are we meeting, are our meetings, length, frequency, all that stuff appropriate? That's really what we're after. And Tammy, a couple nuggets of wisdom, and then at another point, they can continue on that conversation.
Nuggets of wisdom, that's dangerous to ask me for, Harry. I would really echo what Harry said, thinking about as you set your as you have your annual and your reorganizational meeting, and thinking about what that calendar looks like and what works for you all and what that cadence looks like. Lou reached out across the US to our peers to say, what research do you have that says here's the exact amount of perfect time for a perfect meeting? And that answer doesn't quite exist. But what I would say is, how much time do you need to cover the topics that you have at hand? And you all are busy. I'm sure none of you want to meet just to meet. But as you are carefully thinking about what are the topics that you have to cover and how much time do you need to spend on them, I think also becomes really important as well, so that you all have plenty of time to have that conversation. But we do invite you to look at that each year. Just like many of these other pieces that we have talked about, I think that becomes really important to look at what your cadence is and what's working. And when you have some bigger projects that you're working on, you may find you need an extra meeting or two to work through some of those pieces. And then you might find there are times that you don't need that. So those are my, Harry, those are my nuggets. Lou, what would you add?
Ditto.
Harry, I'm passing it to you. You unmuted and then you muted.
Okay. So in essence, our encouragement, our blessing, whatever you want to call it, to have that conversation. You're in a different season now than you were 4 or 5 years ago. You recognize that you have much work to still be done. You're not perfect. You haven't answered all the questions that need to be. There's much to be done, but give yourselves, and we're encouraging that, permission to ask, can we re-regulate how far down the gas pedals push and how frequently we're riding at that speed. Back to Dan, Karen, or TJ, does that align with your hopes for this topic in terms of entryway? And we'll step out so you can finish your other items.
I think that sets us up to probably do a committee of the whole discussion on goals and things like that. So, again, thank you so much. Harry is retired and he still comes and hangs out with us. From Maine, yeah. Well, and with Lou, has been with us from day one, and now bringing in Tammy and stuff. We do have a lot of great board members, but we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for the Iowa Association of School Boards. So we do greatly appreciate that. Not only does it help our board superintendent team, but it also helps the cabinet members, and from there it cascades on down to the rest of the district. see how I fit that other C in there for you. Do you guys have anything else for us?
Thank you for your leadership and all that you do for the students in your greater community, school community. You are deeply appreciated. Thank you.
So, we, before you guys leave, I could see the writing on the wall. Okay. I know that this is probably, unless invited, the last quarterly meeting that we're going to have with you, Lou. We couldn't be more blessed to have a past board president, somebody so passionate about, the board stepping in to take those roles. But Lou, thank you so much for everything that you've done for us. And I know you're not going, we're going to see you at the convention, but just to recognize the work that you and Harry have done. And the fact that Harry said he'll stay as long as we want him to, I honestly believe that. He's been retired for 2 or 3 years now. He patiently guides us, listens, that institutional knowledge carries. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. And we couldn't be more fortunate to have Tammy joining our team, because I don't think it's our board's expectation that we're going to stop reflecting on best practices. So I just want to say thank you and welcome, because I think that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. And so, Lou, thank you very much. And Harry, always.
Yeah. I keep hanging around because you folks, your team actually takes action on what you're learning. You put it to use and continue to do. So good for you guys.
Hey, we're going to take a photo. Can you put Harry up on the screen? And then we're going to come right up here. Watch this, Harry.
Yeah, my big head will look even bigger.
Smile, Harry.
We are going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will be right back. All right, we are back. We will move on to recognitions. There are none this evening. Board reports. Are there any board reports? All right, seeing none, we will move on to communications. Open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district's website for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T at tbren@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. You will be asked to state your name and home address prior to making remarks. To participate virtually, call 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 992-8800-1261 and passcode 334199. Brenda, did we have any virtual? Thank you. For the record, she said no. We have one open forum request tonight. Mike Reinhold, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Mike Reinhold, 4440 Richmond Court in Bettendorf. I am the proud president of the Davenport Education Association, and I'm speaking on behalf of our local teachers tonight. Just a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was about a month ago, Superintendent Schneckloff received the Team Award from the Iowa State Education Association. TEAM stands for Together Educators and Administrators Make Things Happen. This terrible acronym but special award provides a perfect sentiment for the relationship between our teachers and the Davenport administration. This award is presented to a select group of nominated administrators throughout the state of Iowa that prioritize cooperation, transparency, and respect between the school system and their teacher union. TJ showcases these qualities through his commitment to our labor management process, bargaining, and our open communication processes. This award is a testament to our shared belief that when we work together, we are stronger and have better outcomes for all of our students. Thank you for putting our staff first, Mr. Schneckloff. Thank you for believing in coming together to come together. In coming together to come to common solutions. Thank you for your leadership and belief in our processes, and congratulations on your award. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. The board always likes to hear from members of our community. We will move on to consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. All right, we will move on to committee reports. Breaking Barriers Committee. Okay. Legislative Advocacy, nothing at this time. LZAC,
None at this time.
Long Range Facilities Plan.
None at this time.
Policy Committee.
This time.
Finance Committee.
None at this time.
All right. All right, we will move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 11.01, policies for board approval?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve policies 206.03, 411.02, and 603.01.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.02, approval of the Title 9 equity coordinators? I don't know what I was thinking there. Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the Title IX Equity Coordinator as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.03, approval of level 1 and 2 investigators?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the level 1 and 2 investigators as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. All right, we will move on to discussion items. Our first subject for discussion is 12.01, K-8 headphones. I'll turn it over to Superintendent.
What's before you today, a lot of our programming requires our students to put headphones on in our elementary and middle schools. And up until this point, that's been left to the buildings to purchase their own headphones. Well, what happens is that people try and buy the cheap, get a good deal, get a good bargain, but we end up wasting a lot of money on headphones. So we put together, Miss Saxon back there and Diane put together a team and said, let's pick some headphones. It's going to be costly, but we're going to buy a better product that's going to last longer. The other key component to this is Courtney and her team is going to ensure that we have procedures in place to make sure these headphones are taken care of. And so this is part of our district standard work. And so for those of you who have been in a classroom, done walkthroughs lately, or gone in and seen, you see that the state that our headphones in. Well, these are a much higher quality headphone. It's going to be not quite noise canceling, but it's going to really be able to cover the ear, allow our students to focus on the work at hand. And so that's what's before the board today.
Is there any? Director Klein Jerome.
So will every headphone, like this is my headphones and it's my headphones for the entire year so that we're not spreading critters?
Germs.
That's my first question. And then my second question is, okay, if they are assigned to me all year long, then, and I'm in third grade, then will my fourth grade teacher get my headphones so I can continue to use them? Do we expect their life expectancy to be more than a year?
So there will be classroom sets, and then they will be put in baggies or some type of form that way with student names on it. So the student will use the same set of headphones every year. There's a way to disinfect them, just as there is a way to disinfect preschool toys or other things that are in the classroom environment. So we'll put that process in place too. And they will last for multiple years.
So they'll just go on to the next grade level and, okay, thank you.
Director Klein, or Director Beck, sorry.
Yeah, I Googled the set, and they're the over-ear ones, which I understand is actually pretty easy to sanitize. If you just need a wipe usually for those. But my question is, I noticed that they are the kind that have the 3.5 millimeter plug, which is becoming increasingly hard to find. I don't know I'm assuming it's available on the Chromebooks still. They have the headphone jack still, and it's not going anywhere.
Correct.
Okay.
We partnered with multiple departments, including IT, And we also had headphones in the buildings to try those out. Multiple different sets were delivered here and shared with buildings to just find out from a student perspective, wearability, functionality of the headphones.
Okay. Are these in elementary? Are they going to be volume limited? Do they have a volume limit on them?
Oh, I'm not 100% on that. We have that right here.
Because I didn't see a difference between the elementary and middle school ones. I only ask because kids' headphones often come volume limited to like 85 decibels, which is fine if you're in a quiet environment, but does not work on an airplane or in other loud places. And so I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to find out for
Okay.
you.
I mean, it may be fine if they are, but I don't know. One other thing. Thank you.
Yes.
I am so tired of buying headphones for my child.
Well, this made
to
a
take
difference.
to school.
Yeah, on the supply list.
Yes. I know. Thank you.
Yes.
And it's much better that they all have the same thing.
Is there any other questions or any other information board members need before voting on this at the next regular meeting? I have a couple. What is gonna be put in place? Like, what are the I know you said, I think you said Courtney and her team are gonna work on best practices to make sure the headphones don't get messed up. I mean, I'm sure elementary, they're gonna be a lot harder on the equipment. Usually about like the second weekend of school, if I go into like my kid's classroom, I notice some of the kids' headphones are already broken. So what is in place for that? And is there like replacement plans for these things? Are they warranted or something? Or, I mean, we're gonna drop a lot of money, which I understand that part, but is there like a 30-day warranty that their stuff's not gonna fall apart or something like that?
Yeah, there is a warranty. I would have to check to see what the exact length of the warranty is. And so we did talk about what is the process to oversee that. So if I'm in a building and there's one that goes down, who is contacted, who follows up on the warranty to switch those out. So we're in the process of looking at that part of it too. We also have all of the headphones, so purchasing those, and then they'll go to the warehouse. So from there, ensuring that the buildings will have access. So if a new student moves in, or the numbers change or something, we will have headphones available for students, all students.
Okay, perfect. This is gonna sound like a really weird question, but are the cords kind of long? Because some kids, when they're on there, they move around a lot, right?
Yes.
You don't want them jerking their Chromebook off and things.
Yeah, they definitely have a nice length to them, and they're also a really nice durable cord that goes with it.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually played with all of them that came to us. So we tested like strength of cord. We talked about braided cord versus it not being, the ones that coiled versus not. The ear pads themselves, did they come off? Were they removable? Because that's always an issue. So we had, I think there were about 10 of us that were together trying them out. We tried them on with the sound, then to check and see like how does that work if other people are trying to talk to you. So those were all things that we did when we were testing them all out to come to which one was our best option.
Okay. And then another question along that. So if the headphones get damaged, are the parents responsible for buying a replacement? Or is that just something we eat the cost on that and then they have to get their child their own set of headphones or something?
We'll work with IT, so it would be the same as what it would be with a Chromebook.
Okay.
The same protocol and process. There we go, Jen. Thank you. It's a 2-year warranty.
Perfect.
Yeah.
They knew you were getting them for elementary kids, right? Okay.
Yeah, they actually by far had one of the best warranties when we were looking at also for different
Awesome.
options. So.
I had another question too, and I totally forgot it now. So I'm assuming like the first day of school, the teacher's gonna go over like the rules of, hey, these are nice headphones. Make sure you take care of them, things like that. You've already covered. Um, when I was asking about like the replacement costs, I just want to make sure, like from our standpoint as a district, that if a parent had to purchase that or something, we didn't put someone in a financial situation where if they weren't able to afford that or something. I think it's awesome that they'll all have the same headphones. So, no one's going to have Spider-Man and Black Panther and, they'll all be the same.
Right. Or the earbuds that look like they're working and they aren't working. And so just with all of the technology and the access within the curriculum resources, it's just so important that we have that standard of care, and certainly excited and grateful for the team that did the exploration because there was a lot of thought and a lot of discussions across departments as well, and the Learning and Results Department really taking a great lead in determining the best one, and again getting it in the buildings, the hands of students, getting teacher input was very valuable.
Okay. And then do like any of the surrounding districts do that? I mean, I don't know if you guys talk to them at all or to see if they've had success with it or like pros and cons.
Not with these particular headphones.
Okay.
Did not reach out to another district, no.
Okay.
But many of them still, as I just perused a few, just random districts, even outside of our area, still on the student, the supply list.
Okay.
So.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Is there any other questions or information board members need? All right. Thank you. We will move on to subject 12.02, policies for board review. I will turn it over to Director Klein Jerome.
Before we raise any questions or anything, I'd like to point out policy 50502. We have a question. We need to check with IASB. It is on retention promotion in kindergarten through 8th grade. And the policy reads, it is within the sole discretion of the district to retain students in their current grade level and to deny promotion to a student. But a law passed this past year where it now says parents can request retention and district must follow this, that we cannot deny a parent if they said. So that really takes away, it's not the sole discretion of the district. So we just want to make sure that that wording is right. So sole discretion may come out of that policy. That would be the only change. But does anybody have any other questions about? And first of all, I'd also like to say thank you to Brenda. She has spent hours and hours and hours on these policies. And when she sends them to the committee, they are our policy, the draft policy, IASB policy, so that we don't have to flip back and forth and it's just 1, 2, 3, open all three, compare. And I truly, truly appreciate it. She was killing me this last time with 30 policies, but she made life easier. Any other questions?
So in terms of the chronic absenteeism truancy policy, this is the policy that IASB recommends coming out of the new legislation. We also have our task team reviewing the procedures and regulations. We don't anticipate any recommendations of changing any language or lingo from that policy, but because we're going to be implementing the rules and how we implement this inside of our building. So just wanted to make the board aware of that as well, that the rules and regulations and how we put that out. But if for some reason they say, well, let's recommend this to the policy, I think they're going to keep that out of the policy level and keep it in the regs part, but just on alert that might be a potential as well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Director Poston.
Is there a reason why 501.03 and 501.09 could not be combined?
In many cases, this comes out of IASB And go back down. 50103, it is a mandatory policy.
Okay.
On that one. And when I look at 50109, again, all the changes, I guess we could put those two together, but the first one is a mandatory policy. So to put something in there that isn't part of the mandatory kind of muddies the water.
Okay.
I was just going to follow up to that. Also, the compulsory attendance policy doesn't require a district to have a truancy officer, whereas the chronic absenteeism and truancy one specifically addresses that issue.
And then in both of them, they talk about parents' responsibilities, and to me, there's not much teeth in this. Is that what you were referring to, TJ? That will come from administration?
Yes. So the actual law is at the end of each grading period, as it talks about here, we're required to give to the county attorney.
Okay.
So that's the law portion of it and the regulations. Now, how does a school do that? So after the first grading period and the second grading period, different things happen and different things initiate. And so that's exactly what the regulations are
But
saying.
that is the plan for the district?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank
It's
you.
the law.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, like all these policies have administrative regs that don't have to come to the board. That is, the administration develops them and they are published, but we don't have to approve the regulations.
And I have the same question for 502.06 and 905.03. Again, I know the one is a mandatory policy, but just looking at the possibility of combining the two.
Yes, because they do read similar, the two policies. Brenda, what's ISBE though puts them separately, don't they?
I think the weapons one, the 501, is focused on students who bring weapons, and the other one is focused on anyone in the district. So it includes staff, military personnel, those kinds of things. So that's the difference there. One is student focused and one is everybody else. And that's why they're separate.
But it does actually, the 50206 addresses parents of students found in possession. So, I mean, it does include more than just students. And what'd you say, Dan? Yep.
So when we started doing the whole policy work with the ISB, we discussed trying to keep aligned with their stuff. So when they do their policy primer, there's updates, our numbers are in line with theirs because we were, this has been like how many years that we've been trying to get through this because the numbers weren't in line and it was so hard getting everything. So now we're getting to where we're in line with the ISB and we might have a few policies that are specific to our district, or we might add a little bit to that, but that's sometimes why you'll see a couple like that. And it might be something on how it's referenced in the law or whatever too.
And then one last question on that. Is there a possibility of inserting, as far as dangerous weapons and objects, insert cell phones? Because this reads, school district facilities cause material and substantial disruption to the school environment or present a threat to the health, you could say mental health and safety of students.
Yeah.
So policy committee, you can come back with that.
We will discuss it. Any other comments, questions? Okay, this will come back again. Thank you.
Thank you, and again, thank you, Brenda, for all the work on that stuff. We'll move on to administrative reports now. Before you even tell me, every other committee report had nothing to report at this time, so I think you're gonna have to give something now. All right, are there any board requests? Oh, I thought you were grabbing one. All right, board reflections, we'll start with Director Beck.
It is really incredible to see some of the things that we asked about and struggled with become part of the curriculum for other school board members in the state. And it's kind of, it makes me feel a little, I'm remembering when we had a lot of these discussions and we had a lot of those early workshops, and it is so unbelievable to see what a difference it is. Now we're refining and reflecting on a regular basis. We're not just all over the place. And I just, it's a real, I don't know, I think it's a real celebration how far we've come. And also thank you to Luann and Harry for being with us through all that.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Poston.
I just appreciate IASB and their workshop that we were just involved with. We're at a point right now where we're not struggling quite as much as when we first worked with IASB, and that was so much help. And I remember coming on as a new board member. That was definitely a plus for me. And the other thing I'm very interested in and want to monitor right from the get-go and is that pouch system with the cell phones.
Thank you, Director Poston. Director Hayes.
Again, the workshop by far, it's nice to see actually in writing what we discussed years ago that now has come into fruition, and the growth that we've made as a board. And even the discussion of the onboarding that we had with the legacy to leave information for other boards to find, because we were literally just kind of muddling through in the beginning, and the growth is just amazing to see it on paper and even to hear other people recognize it.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Director Potts.
I think it just, my reflection is that it confirms the fact that if you put in the time and you put in the thinking and you come up with solid goals and guideposts to direct the functioning of the organization, you have success. And, you know, to say these goals have stood the test of time, okay, 8 years maybe, but they're permanent goals and they function well. And so long as we, as a board, continue to function by these operating procedures, we'll be in good stead.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Klein-Jerome.
I agree that the IASB discussion and looking at our protocols and stuff, because when I first got on this board, I couldn't get an answer to the simplest of questions. And so I was one of those people that turned in a whole lot of board requests because it was the only way I could force the current, not the current, but the previous superintendent to give me any answers. So we have come a long way. It is great. I also appreciate the fire department stepping up and being willing to collect supplies for us. That was pretty awesome. That there was an overwhelming support for that program. So that's great.
Thank you, Director Klein-Jerome. Superintendent Schneckloff.
I'd like to thank Michael for coming and sharing the award that this table and that table and your human beings received, because I think we are at our best when we're trying to find solutions to move forward with. And it was an absolute honor to be in a room full of teachers, and nobody comes to the podium and says the grass is mowed, only when it's not. And so just really nice to see some positive comments and really appreciated by everyone here. So thank you for doing that. The IASB taking the time to reflect on those key components is so important to us, and we really appreciate the board carving out the time, resetting those norms. What people don't understand is that for educators, this is our new year. We set our new goals. Let's set all of our goals, and then we're going to start the year. This is when we recalibrate and reset our goals, and so I just really appreciate the board focusing on that.
Thank you, Superintendent. First, I want to thank Sarah Ott for setting up that supply drive with the fire department. You were a great pickup for our district. Thank you very much. We do have a lot of awesome people working in our district. I would put our district up against anybody, and that's all employees. I want to echo what everyone said about the IASB workshop. It always comes out beneficial. It helps us as the agenda planning committee too when we're trying to nail down items for the agenda, so we kind of know how long the meeting's gonna run and things like that. We do put a lot of effort into making sure that we're a high functioning board. I want to thank all of you for giving your time and caring while you're there. Again, don't get paid, don't get mileage and things like that. So everyone's here because they want to be here in the best interests of the students. So again, thank you all for that. And it's nice for folks to see us reaffirming our goals and setting, the trajectory for the next school year. So with that, Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.